You're cruising the right lane, minding your own business, blasting some country on the radio, when out of nowhere, a beat Honda Civic 1.5 screams past you like it was launched from a catapult. You glance at your speedometer, stare at your gas pedal, and think, what the heck just happened? Safe bet, there was a turbo under that hood. And today you're going to find out exactly how that thing works, why it turns grocery getters into legitimate road weapons, and why pretty much every new car rolling off the lot these days already comes with one. Stick around till the end. There's a golden tip that could save your turbo and keep a nasty repair bill out of your life. Before anything else, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit that button right now and ring the bell. We talk cars the way Americans actually talk about cars. Straight to the point. No engineering, textbook BS. All right, let's start from scratch. Think of your car's engine like a living thing that needs to breathe. Seriously, the engine sucks in air, mixes it with fuel, compresses everything together, and detonates that mix. That explosion pushes the piston down and moves the car. Simple enough, right? But here's the big problem with a regular engine. What folks call a naturally aspirated engine. It can only pull in as much air as flows in on its own. It's like trying to run a marathon breathing through a coffee stirrer. Technically possible, not fun. For decades, the only solution was bigger engines. More cylinders, more displacement, more power. That's how we ended up with 2.0 S, 24 S, 30 S, V6 South. It worked great, but big engines, weigh more, drink more fuel, and take up more space under the hood. Then some genius had a brilliant idea. What if we force more air into the engine without making it any bigger? That's exactly what a turbocharger does. The turbocharger, or just turbo, like everybody calls it, is a compressor powered by the engine's own exhaust gases. Let that sink in. Exhaust gases. The energy your engine would just throw away out the tailpipe. The turbo grabs it, uses it, and sends it back into the engine as extra power. It's basically recycling waste. If you think that sounds clever, just wait till you hear how it works inside. The turbo has two sides. There's the hot side, connected to the exhaust, and the cold side, connected to the engine's air intake. These two sides are separated internally but connected by a central shaft. On the hot side, exhaust gases arrive absolutely scorching, and we're not exaggerating. Temperatures between 1,450 and 1,650 degrees Fahrenheit. Those gases spiral inside a housing and spin a bladed wheel called the turbine wheel. Think of a pinwheel, except instead of a gentle breeze, it's supersonic exhaust gas doing the spinning. That wheel can hit insane speeds, minus 80,000 to over 200,000 RPM. For reference, a regular car engine maxes out around 6,000 to 7,000 RPM. The turbo spins up to 40 times faster. That turbine wheel is locked onto a shaft, and on the other end of that shaft is the compressor wheel sitting on the cold side. When the turbine spins, the compressor spins with it, and that compressor sucks in fresh air from the air filter and packs it tight before shoving it into the engine. Compressed air means more oxygen molecules in the same space. More oxygen means you can burn more fuel. More fuel burning means a bigger explosion. More force, more horsepower. If you're into this so far, drop a like right now. That simple little click genuinely helps the channel grow and keeps this free content coming. And let us know in the comments, does your car have a turbo? We actually read those. Now, here's a detail most people miss. When you compress air, it heats up. Basic physics. If you've ever pumped up a bike tire and noticed the pump getting warm, that's exactly the same effect. The problem: hot air is less dense, and less dense air is the opposite of what we want. The whole point of the turbo is to pack more air into the engine, and if that air arrives hot and expanded, you're losing efficiency. The fix is called it's a heat exchanger, basically a radiator, that sits between the turbo and the engine. The air leaves the compressor hot and passes through the engine, where outside air cools it down before it enters the engine. Cooler air is denser, carries more oxygen, and makes more power. That's why on built cars, you see those air intakes in the hood or behind the front bumper. That's the intercooler needing to breathe. There's one more component you need to know. The weird name, but it's just a valve that controls how much exhaust gas flows through the turbine. If all the gases blast through the turbine unchecked, the turbo keeps spinning faster and faster. Pressure builds without limit, and things start grenading themselves. The wastegate opens when pressure hits the target and reroutes some exhaust straight to the tailpipe, bypassing the turbine. It's basically the system's emergency brake. There's also the blow-off valve, or BOV, pressure relief valve. When you're hammering the throttle, the turbo spins up hard and builds pressure. But when you suddenly lift off, the engine closes the throttle plate and the turbo is still spinning and pushing air. That air has nowhere to go and can damage the compressor. The blow-off valve releases that pressure, and on sports cars, you hear that iconic peesh sound when the driver lifts after a hard pull. That noise you think sounds cool. It's actually a safety part doing its job. Let's talk about a problem every turbo owner knows well. Turbo lag. Plain English. The turbo's delay. When you're cruising slowly or idling, the engine generates minimal exhaust. Minimal exhaust means the turbine isn't spinning fast enough to build boosts. When you floor it suddenly, the engine needs a moment to push more exhaust, the turbine needs a moment to spool up, and only then does the boost arrive. That split second between mashing the gas and actually feeling the power, that's turbo lag. In older cars, it was a real issue. People complained, the car felt sluggish, and then suddenly surged forward, which was annoying and honestly dangerous during highway. Modern engineering has basically killed turbo lag on new cars. One of the slickest solutions is the sequential twin-turbo setup. In a sequential twin-turbo, two turbos work together. A small turbine easy to spool handles the low RPM range. As the engine winds up and produces more exhaust, a larger second turbo kicks in and delivers power up top. You get instant response down low and big power up high. Best of both worlds. There's also parallel twin turbo, common on V engines with 6, 8, or 12 cylinders, like the Ford F-150 EcoBoost V6 or the Dodge Ram with its twin turbo diesel, where each bank of cylinders gets its own dedicated turbo. And newer tech, variable geometry turbos. These are the sophisticated units that modern diesel engines love. Internal vanes change angle depending on engine RPM, adjusting the speed and volume of gas flowing through the turbine. At low RPM, the vanes close to concentrate flow and spin the turbine faster. At high RPM, they open to let more gas through. The result is a turbo that works well across the entire RPM range, almost no lag, generous torque in every gear. Now let's get into history, because this part is wild and most people have no clue. The turbo concept is over 100 years old. A Swiss engineer named Alfred Büchi developed the idea in 1905 to boost diesel engine power. He became obsessed with the problem of heat, wasted in exhaust gases, and spent 20 years building a working system. When he finally nailed it, the power gain was over 40%. The technology became a sensation in aviation during World War I and even more in World War II. Aircraft needed to maintain power at high altitudes where the air is thin, almost half the density of sea level air. An engine without a turbo lost nearly half its power. At 30,000 feet, with a turbo, it maintained intake pressure close to sea level and kept flying strong. The Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, one of the most iconic bombers of World War II, ran turbos made by General Electric. Very American, if you think about it. In cars, the story starts in a quirky way. In 1962, General Motors launched two turbocharged cars at the same time, the Oldsmobile Jetfire and the Chevrolet Corvair Spider. The Jetfire had a 215 cubic inch V8 that made 215 horsepower with the turbo, impressive numbers for the AR. But there was a massive problem. It needed a second reservoir filled with a mix of methanol and distilled water to be injected into the system to prevent detonation. If the owner forgot to top it off, the car automatically disabled the turbo. Picture it. Some guy buys a sporty 215 horsepower car, and suddenly it drives like a base trim economy box because he forgot to check a mystery fluid tank. Not exactly a hit with the public. GM actually removed the system for free on every car already sold. Then in 1975, Porsche dropped the 911 Turbo with a 3.0-liter engine and 260 horsepower. That car changed everything. It showed the world that turbo wasn't a gimmick or a reliability nightmare. It was evil, and from that point on, the turbo started taking over the passenger car market for real. Now, let me explain why every new car has a turbo today. It's not just about power. It's about fuel economy and emissions. Governments worldwide, including the EPA here in the US, kept tightening CO2 rules. And automakers needed engines that used less fuel without losing performance. The answer was downsizing. Smaller displacement engines, paired with turbos. A 1.5-liter turbocharged engine today delivers the power and torque that a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated engine used to, while burning significantly less gas. That's why the Ford F-150 offers a 2.7-liter EcoBoost V6 making 325 horsepower. That's why the Honda Civic has a 1.5-liter turbo with 192 horsepower. That's why the Chevy Trax runs a 1.2-liter turbo making 137 horsepower. Turbo became an efficiency technology, not just a performance upgrade. Quick seconds, CTA, if you're enjoying this, hit the like button. Takes 2 seconds. And go ask your buddy who drives a turbocharged car whether he's keeping up with his oil changes. Drop his answer in the comments. Could be entertaining. Let's talk turbo versus supercharger, because people mix these up all the time. A supercharger also forces air into the engine. The difference is where it gets its energy, while the turbo uses exhaust gases. The supercharger is driven mechanically by the engine itself, usually a belt connected to the crankshaft. The supercharger's advantage is instant boost at any RPM, zero lag. You stab the throttle, air goes in, done. But there's a price, since it steals mechanical energy from the engine to work. A typical setup can consume 40 to 60 horsepower just to run itself. You're taking power from the engine to give power back to the engine, which sounds a little like something you'd read on a shampoo bottle. The turbo is more efficient because it uses energy that would have been thrown away. But there's the lag. Modern engineers solve that with bull-bearing turbos, variable geometry, smaller trim sizes, and faster electronic management. Today, lag is nearly imperceptible on stock vehicles. That's why the turbo won the battle and now dominates the global market. Airing de ultrasonografia. The situation has its own interesting twist. E85 ethanol, available at a growing number of gas stations, has a key property: it supports much higher compression ratios without detonation, which lets turbocharged engines run even more efficiently on it. Some flex fuel vehicles already take advantage of this. A turbo engine running on E85 squeezes out even more from the system. It's a combination that actually makes a lot of sense if you have the access and want the most out of your setup. And now, the golden tip we promised at the top. The single most important thing you can do to keep your turbocharged engine healthy past 150,000 or even 200,000 miles is this: regular oil changes, no excuses. There's no secret sauce, no magic additive. The turbo shaft spins at over 100,000 RPM and is lubricated entirely by engine oil. If that oil is old, dirty, or low, friction will destroy the shaft and bearings fast. A replacement turbo can run anywhere from $800 to $3,000 or more depending on the vehicle. An oil change on something like a turbocharged Civic, maybe $60 to $90 at a quick lube. The math is not complicated. Always use the viscosity recommended by the manufacturer. It's usually on the oil cap or in the owner's manual. Many mechanics who specialize in turbocharged cars suggest shortening your change interval to 5,000 miles instead of 7,500 if you're doing a lot of stop-and-go city driving, lots of hard pulls or tow-in. The turbo will thank you. One more important habit: when you get back from a long or hard drive, don't just shut the car off immediately. Let it idle for 2 to 3 minutes first. The turbo runs extremely hot and still needs oil flow to cool down and lubricate while it's warm. If you kill the engine right away, oil stops circulating. Residual heat literally cooks the oil sitting in the shaft, and deposits build up over time that damage the turbo. Just let the car breathe before you shut it down. Let's wrap up everything you learned today. The turbo is a compressor that captures energy from exhaust gases, energy that would have been wasted, and uses it to compress air and push more oxygen into the engine. More oxygen means more fuel can be burned, which generates more power without needing a bigger engine. The system includes the turbine wheel on the hot side, the central shaft, the compressor wheel on the cold side, the intercooler that cools the compressed air, the wastegate that limits max pressure, and the blow-off valve that protects the compressor when you lift off the throttle. Turbo lag is the natural delay for the turbine to spool up, and modern solutions like sequential twin turbos and variable geometry have nearly eliminated it. And the most important maintenance is simply staying on top of your oil changes. If you made it this far, respect. You now know more about turbos than probably 90% of drivers on the road. And honestly, more than a few car salespeople too, but that's a topic for another video. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with that friend who just bought a turbocharged car and has absolutely no idea how to take care of it. You might literally be saving his engine. Got questions or turbo stories? Drop them in the comments. We read everything. See you in the next one.